In this video, I'm talking about how many Steam Decks have been sold in celebrating 3 years of the Steam Deck. How's it going, everyone? As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. This is Deck Ready, my channel all about the Steam Deck. And yeah, that's pretty much all I'm talking about in this video. We now know how many Steam Decks have been sold, and I want to do a little bit of a retrospective on the past 3 years of having this great handheld in my life. So this data is coming from The Verge and their new article celebrating 3 years of the Steam Deck. I highly recommend checking it out because it's super interesting. Essentially what they did is they hired an outside firm to do some research and figure out how many handheld PCs have been sold since 2022. And they break it down by literal numbers by 2022, 2023, 2024, and the beginning of 2025. Now, the unfortunate thing is they had to glom it all together, so it includes everything from the ROG Ally, the Ally X, the Legion Go, and the Steam Deck together. But through the data, The Verge has guessed that around 4 million of the total 6 million units that have been sold by the Steam Deck. And that's really not surprising. I'd guess that the second place spot goes to the ROG Ally, but I'm not really sure if they're counting returns because, I mean, just walk into your local Best Buy. The ROG Ally would be sold and then people would take it home, realize that Windows is a terrible experience on a handheld device, and immediately return it. I went to a Best Buy in California back when I was living out there. The ROG Ally shelf was full to the brim with open box ROG Allies, and my business partner Ray, who runs Xbox Ready, when he wanted to get an ROG Ally, he ended up buying an open box ROG Ally because it's a great way to get a good discount on a piece of hardware that was probably only used for less than an hour. I mean, when you turn on a new Windows device, I just had a recent experience with this when I had to replace my laptop. That thing is out of commission for the entire night when you first get it. I got a new Razer Blade to replace the one that died, and just going from starting it up from the first time to actually being able to use it once it downloads all the Windows updates, once it downloads all the drivers, once it gets Windows set up and you click through every offer they have for Microsoft 365 and X, Y, and Z, it takes all night. I got home from Micro Center at 5 o'clock and I didn't even get to play a game because it finally finished updating at 11. And just because the ROG Ally is a handheld doesn't mean you're not going to have to go through the same experience. The big problem is you do. It's just a Windows device running that, and the Steam Deck, on the other hand, is not anything similar at all when it comes to opening it up for the first time. There are updates. Yes, you have to download, you have to log into Steam, you have to patch it and everything like that, but it really only takes around 20 or 30 minutes. And my context for that is from when the Steam Deck came out. When I got my first Steam Deck, it took 30 minutes to get it up and running, download a game, and get right into the game. You can't really compare that experience to the Windows devices. So I'd guess that 4 million out of 6 million makes a lot of sense. And then the leftover 2 million is first purchase ROG Allies, but a lot of them were probably returned. So from my perspective, as someone who has a channel about PlayStation and knows the numbers of things like the PS Vita and the PS4 and the PS5, obviously 4 million doesn't sound like anything compared to that. And if it was a PlayStation Vita, that would be a massive failure. It's actually about a third of what the PS Vita sold through. And that's why you can kind of tell why Sony kind of abandoned that thing pretty damn quick. It just didn't catch on in the right way in the marketplace. And I've also seen a lot of people saying this is why the Nintendo Switch 2 doesn't have to worry about the Steam Deck, but I think they're kind of missing the forest for the trees in a lot of different ways. The first one being, this is really good because the Steam Deck is not a Vita. The Steam Deck is not a Switch 2. It's a completely different console with a completely different goal set. I think Valve's whole initiative here with the Steam Deck from the outset was to make a device that they could test SteamOS 3.0 on, get it into a niche dedicated user set of hands, let them test it out, give them feedback, and then they can make those implementations. And then when they're done, they can release SteamOS on laptops, desktops, and other handhelds. And all of the hard work of what people are expecting to get it up to par is already done. All the beta testing has been completed by people who bought a Steam Deck for a cheap price of around $400 to begin with, and they can really just hit the ground running with this new operating system that they developed and tested through the Steam Deck. Another thing that sets it apart from what PlayStation and Nintendo are doing is that they don't allow access to Steam, but you can put Steam on any device that's a PC you want. Like, you can play games on your laptop, you can play games on your desktop, you can play games on your Ally or your Steam Deck, and you have access to not only your entire library of games, but also full online connectivity for multiplayer, depending on the game, of course, because Linux and blah, 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 launchers and easy anti-cheat, blah, blah, blah. But you also have access to your achievements, your saves, your friends, and everything else, and that carries forward. So you might have one PC now, but theoretically in the next 5 or 6 years or so, that PC is going to become obsolete, or the Steam Deck is going to become obsolete. You don't have to wait on Sony or Nintendo to make a new console like the PS6 or the Nintendo Switch 3. You could just go buy another laptop whenever whenever you want, or build a PC whenever you want and take advantage of that library you already have. So the metric Valve is probably going for is just keeping their user base they already have happy while also growing it at the same time through great subsidized hardware, and that's exactly what they're doing. Another thing that comes up with the armchair analysts on Twitter that they always love to leave out is that the buying experience for a Steam Deck is 1,000 to 1,000,000% different than the buying experience for a PS5 or a Nintendo Switch 2. So if you want to buy a Nintendo Switch 2, you're going to pre-order it through Amazon, you're going to pre-order it through Target, you're going to pre-order it through Best Buy, you're going to go pick it up on launch day, or it's going to be delivered to your house. You also see marketing all the time everywhere, whether it's commercials, billboards, signs in the stores. You can buy that thing in a store whenever you want. Whereas with the Steam Deck, unless you're in Japan, there are no brick and mortar stores selling the Steam Deck outside of the used ones or refurbished ones that are sold at GameStop. And how many times have you been into a GameStop over the past 2 or 3 years or so? I would guess the number is small enough that you could count it on one hand. Valve also hasn't done really any marketing compared to the other two. The biggest marketing push I can think of for the Steam Deck is when they did that giveaway at the Game Awards, where it was like every 10 minutes or so, they would give away a Steam Deck to a random user. Outside of that, I mean, I'm doing the marketing, Fan the Deck's doing the marketing, NerdNest is doing the marketing, everyone else is doing the marketing for them. And outside of that, you go to Steam, and on the front page of Steam, which does capture a lot of users, you've got a Steam Deck advertised to you, but there's a lot of ways to explain the 4 million number without making it look like it's terrible compared to Nintendo or PlayStation, because the fact of the matter is they're in completely different businesses. Another thing that really needs to be accounted for is the fact that the Steam Deck and handhelds as a whole that run PC operating systems, whether it's Windows or SteamOS, are really in their baby stage. They are different than the Nintendo Switch. They're different than the PS Vita. They're PCs that you can take on the go, and in the case of the Steam Deck, it's a PC that's running basically an Android launcher on top of it with SteamOS 3.0, which is really just Steam Big Picture running on the Steam Deck at all times. It has 2 separate modes, but it's very similar to if you run Big Picture on your main gaming PC that's running Windows, which you can do on the ROG Ally and the Legion Go. The Verge makes a comparison to the Ray-Ban Meta glasses and says only 2 million of those have been sold, but a lot of analysts and investors are looking at that as a win, because if 2 million people are willing to buy that now, maybe in 10 years they could sell up to 10 million of them a year. And I think that's a decent comparison, but like, I don't really feel like the Meta glasses are all that comparable to the scalability of something like the Steam Deck. I do think that the Steam Deck has nothing but potential to grow, right? Like, a lot of people are in a rush for the Steam Deck 2, and I'll talk about that in the second half of this video, but the hardware we have right now works perfectly fine, does exactly what it's supposed to, and while yes, it is falling behind just a little bit, I think they really have nowhere to go but up with this thing, because it's niche hardware that they're selling to a small dedicated group of people, and with that in mind, they've sold over 4 million of these devices, which is a lot of units to have out there, and clearly there's enough of a community there for me, Fan the Deck, NerdNest to all really talk about all the same news topics all the time and share basically the entire same viewer group that's out there, and it's not small. Sometimes this channel does better than my PS Ready channel, which is crazy because not only is that channel older, it has 200,000 subs, and the PS5 is much bigger in terms of user base than something like the Steam Deck, but lo and behold, regularly I outperform that channel here on Deck Ready, and I don't know why. So yeah, when you look at that number, 4 million Steam Decks, it might not sound like a lot on the outset, and it might even be surprising like it was for me, just seeing how many numbers of people watch these videos, but I think they have nowhere to go but up, and I'm excited to see what the future has in store for my favorite handheld ever. But that brings me to the second part of this video, which is the Steam Deck is 3 years old, which is insane. I feel like it came out 2 days ago. I remember the day I got it, I was able to get one for pretty close to MSRP through eBay with local pickup out in Pomona, California on my birthday, March 3rd, which was awesome. I got to go into the office and have something exciting to film. And I filmed the video where I unboxed the Steam Deck, got it all set up, and then I went to Disneyland with the Steam Deck and took a cool picture in line for Rise of the Resistance at Galaxy's Edge with the deck, which I thought was awesome. Needless to say, in those 3 years, if you've been here from the beginning, you know how far the Steam Deck has come. Like, it worked pretty well when I took it out of the box. It was slow. It was like glitchy when you'd move through the operating system. But in terms of being able to interact with Steam on the handheld, get decent battery life of up to 2.5 hours, and play games just out of the box within 30 or so minutes, it really achieved that mission it set out for itself from the jump, and it's only gotten better since then. I wish Valve would put out a list of features that they've added to the Steam Deck over the past 3 years, because I really liked the initial launch Steam Deck, obviously because I kept making videos on this channel channel, I put hundreds of hours into it, playing indie games, AAA games, getting weird games like Diablo 3 up and running. I sunk hundreds of hours into it. So when they announced the Steam Deck OLED last year, it was like a no-brainer immediate purchase for me. And that experience of getting it was crazy, where everyone signed on Steam at 10 a.m. to get the limited edition one, just like me. It was being added to my cart. The checkout link was breaking. It would block me from going to it over and over again because I did it so many times. So I made a second Steam account. I bought a 500 gigabyte regular edition OLED. Then I got through and bought the limited edition one. So I had to cancel the regular edition OLED. It was a crazy experience. But man, when I opened that case and I saw a black and orange Halloween edition console staring back at me, I was like, this is what I've been waiting for from Valve. And it's just been amazing. I play it literally every single day. I just found out Ghost of Tsushima runs really well on it, so I'm going to download that for my flight to Nashville this weekend. I love the thing, and I don't think it could really get much better without making a second console, which is like kind of the last big hurdle they have to get over. It just has to be said, when it comes to big AAA games, the Steam Deck is falling behind a little bit. Like if you look at the top 10 games on the Steam Deck, Monster Hunter World and Monster Hunter Rise have dominated it throughout the entire life cycle of the past 3 years, and that's obviously going to change with Monster Hunter Wilds, because not only does it not run at all on the Steam Deck, it won't run on good PCs. Like the big recommended benchmark that they put out is to get 1080p 60 FPS at medium settings with upscaling active. You need a pretty decent rig to be able to do that, and while it does run on other handhelds like the ROG Ally, you're not getting a good experience. So one of the marquee games from the Steam Deck as a whole is leaving the console. And there are plenty of other different AAA games that have come out that just haven't been able to run on the device, and sadly that list seems to be growing bigger and bigger the farther along we get into game releases. It finally seems like the PS5 generation is starting, and because of that, these games are just too big to run on the device. I don't think the need is that urgent where they need to get a Steam Deck 2 out next year. I think they've still got at least a year or so left in this thing, but I know a lot of people don't want to see it because they may have just got in with the OLED, or they were finally convinced now, and I still think you have at least a year or two to play on this device, but they need to kind of think forward a little bit more and make sure that not necessarily they're staying up to par with every new game that releases, but at the very least, I'd expect the Steam Deck 2 to be able to comfortably run PS5 era games that are pushing the console to its limits, just because without that, you can only get so far, right? Like you can only get so far with indie games and older games. That's going to keep the niche user base happy that's already there. But if you want to get into the mainstream, you really want to push that 4 million number up to the stratosphere, you've got to have a device that can outdo the Nintendo Switch on harder core third-party games. Not necessarily Nintendo games, because those are never going to come to PC, but if you want to capture the hardcore audience that was playing games like Dragon's Dogma Dark Arisen on the Switch, or Kingdom Come Deliverance, or The Witcher 3, you need a device that launches like the Steam Deck, where you can advertise it as saying all those games run really well on the deck while they run pretty poorly on the Switch or Switch 2. Like, I purposely haven't talked about the Steam Deck 2 at all, mostly because there's been nothing to talk about, but also I see how mad people get when you bring it up. It's an inevitability. I know a lot of people think Valve might be trying to get out of the hardware game by having devices like the Lenovo Legion Go S coming out with SteamOS, but it goes to show that Valve is a critical part to the equation here with SteamOS 3.0, because the Legion Go S reviews came out and they're horrible. Like, that chip running that thing, at least the version with Windows that was sent out to places like The Verge, it is not anywhere close. It's also just nice and refreshing to have something like the Steam Deck where it can feel like I'm getting in on the ground floor again. Innovation in the tech industry as a whole is completely stagnated. Everything's going towards AI. So to have a device like this where I can get excited for it, have that newness feeling that lasted for 3 years and I don't think is going to fade anytime soon, it's something I'm really appreciative of 3 years in. Anyway, guys, that's all I've got for you in today's video. As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching, and shape on.